Hi, I'm Ben. I'm a laboratory analyst for Cavendish Nuclear, based at Gleeson Court in Cumbria. I was always interested in science, so when I finished school, I went to the University of Strathclyde where I studied chemistry. I'm going to be talking to you about my life as an AGR fuel element, designed by Cavendish Nuclear's Youth Voice Network. You'll meet Emma, and she'll be doing an experiment that you can try at home with supervision from a responsible adult. At the end, we'll have a quiz to test how much you've learned and a colouring competition with a prize for the winner. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. I am an element. I have been resting for many years, so I have decided to tell you about my exciting journey through a power station, along with the help of some of my fuel friends. We have affected your lives without you even knowing. For now, I'm living in a cooling pond, which is like a deep swimming pool, with all my fuel friends. But this is the end of my journey, and I need to start at the beginning. So here goes my life as a fuel element. Chapter 2. How I am made. So you need to know how I was made first. My body is made up of a special element called uranium. Uranium is orange in colour, and it can only be found under the ground, normally in places like Australia and Africa. Uranium has to be mined from deep under the ground and dug out. But uranium can't be put straight into my body, because it doesn't like to be separated from the other materials it's mixed with. So to separate it, we have to grind it into a yellow powder called yellow cake. Uranium is made up of two isotopes in the periodic table. Their numbers are 235 and 238. The 235 isotope is the one which is helpful and is put inside me. Chapter 3. What's inside me? Now that I'm made, I have inside me 36 fuel pins, which are filled with uranium-235 ceramic fuel pellets. Each one of these fuel pins is clothed with a stainless steel tube. This makes me feel important as it's very shiny. When the fuel pins are complete, they are connected, and I then have an outer graphite sleeve. This is my sports shirt. Then they write an identity number on my shirt. Now I have a name. I am a part of the Nuclear Knights. We are a team of fuel rods and are now called a fuel assembly, made to supply electricity to the world. Chapter 4. Our journey to a power station. So now my teammates and I are ready. Next we go on a new adventure, where we are transported to a power station. When we get to the power station, we are taken to a big building, which is called the reactor. This is next to another big building, which is called the turbine hall. This is where all the heat that we make is used to generate electricity, which travels down cables, which run high over people's heads and travel towards houses in the distance. Chapter 5. Going inside the reactor. When we are at the power station, my friends and I are checked to make sure we haven't got hurt along the journey. Then I am joined with 7 other fuel elements, and this is part of the bigger team I will be playing with to help supply electricity. We have to then wait our turn to enter the reactor. The waiting is terrible. We are all eager to start playing the game, but we have to wait patiently in the queue, because we are going to replace another team who are getting tired. When it's our time to go, some of my teammates are scared, because they are worried about not being able to produce heat to make electricity. But we meet the fueling machine, who has to lower us into the reactor, and she is very friendly, and she looks after us. We all like the fueling machine. It feels like I'm flying when she lifts us up into the air. I look down into the reactor, and it looks like a big grey hole filled with about 300 other fuel assemblies. Now we are lowered into a fuel channel, which the team that got tired were in. Once we are in the fuel channel, the fuel machine has to leave us so she can collect the next fuel assembly. We are sad that she has to go away, but she promised us she will see us again when we have finished our... Chapter 6. Making energy. Once I get in the reactor, my job is half done. I have looked after the uranium inside me so far. Now, this is the exciting part of my job. The uranium-235, which is inside me, is made up of three things which work together to create energy. These three things are nippy neutrons, peggy protons, and eddy electrons. Inside the uranium, they make little groups, but some of the nippy neutrons like to whiz around and cause trouble. They try to bump into the groups to break them up, and when the other nippy neutrons see the fun they are having, they like to join in and break up even more of these groups. When there are so many nippy neutrons whizzing around causing trouble, it starts to get very hot. It feels like I'm on holiday in Spain. This reaction inside of me is helped by large blocks of graphite which slows down the nippy neutrons. It does this so that they collide into each other more, as this is part of the reaction, where the neutrons collide and join the nucleus of the atoms so that they become too heavy and split. This is a reaction. Our job is to keep the temperature in the reactor core at 650 degrees. But if the temperature becomes too hot, then control rods, which are full of boron, will be lowered into the reactor with us. The naughty neutrons nicknamed him Barry Boron because if he has to come into the reactor, he tells them off for having too much fun. If some of the neutrons are cheeky, they may be taken out to go with Barry Boron. Normally they behave when he's around, so they can stay and have fun. Now we know what a reaction is. Let's do a couple of experiments with Emma to see what a reaction looks like.
Hi, so today you've heard Ben talk a bit about chemical reactions, and what we're going to do is make our own chemical reaction. We're going to be using bicarbonate of soda, vinegar and water, and this is going to produce carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is a gas made up of carbon and oxygen, and gases take up a lot more space than solids and liquids. So as we do this experiment, we're expecting to see it take up a lot more room than it originally does, which is why we're outside, because it's going to create a lot of mess. So here we have about 10 mils of washing up liquid, and to that we're going to add about 400 millilitres of vinegar and 100 millilitres of water. We're just going to put that in our bottle. And it smells, funnily enough, very strongly of vinegar. We've also added a little bit of food colouring just to make it a bit more fun. And now in another cup we have about half a cup of bicarbonate of soda and then water, and we're just making this up into a slurry. So you want to stir it until it's mostly a liquid, and then we're going to add this to our bottle, and then we're going to run away. As you can see, the vinegar and the bicarb react and they make lots of bubbles in the form of carbon dioxide, which no longer fits in the bottle. So if you're going to do this at home, have a responsible adult and do it somewhere where they're not going to tell you off for making a mess.
Chapter 7. Electricity for your home. When Barry Boron has left the reactor, the fuel elements, like me, will pass the heat, which is made by the nippy neutrons, to a gas called carbon dioxide, which is all around us. The carbon dioxide travels down pipes to a large tank of water called a boiler, which is like a big kettle. The heat warms up the boiler to produce steam. The steam from this then turns a large wheel called a turbine, which then turns a generator, which creates electricity. This electricity zooms down cables and wires across the country to your house to provide power so that you can make tea with your kettle or charge your iPad when the battery runs out. Carbon dioxide is a gas made up of carbon and oxygen, which are elements in the periodic table. When we breathe in, we are breathing in oxygen, which is sent around our bodies to feed our muscles. When we are finished with the oxygen, we breathe out again, and the stuff that comes out is called carbon dioxide, so there's a lot of it around us, but not as much as in a reactor. The amount of carbon dioxide in a reactor is 10 tons. This would mean we would have to breathe out 10 million times to get the same amount of carbon dioxide. Chapter 8. Leaving the reactor. One of the most amazing things about being a fuel rod is that I can provide heat to produce electricity for over 8 years in the reactor. This takes a lot of my energy though, and eventually my fuel friends and I feel tired, and it's time for us to leave the hot reactor. It's been a long time since we've seen the fueling machine, and we all shout a welcome to her as she comes to collect us, excited to tell her about succeeding to produce electricity. She laughs at our boasts as we try to convince her that we must have been the greatest fuel assembly so far. Because we have been in the reactor and become radioactive, we have to be handled carefully and cannot come into contact with people when we have been removed from the reactor. The fueling machine takes us to a large pond where we are left to cool in the water. After we have cooled down, we leave the pond and the reactor to be taken to the long-term storage building where my story began. My fueler friends and I have been here for 50 years now, and it will be many more years for the amount of radiation in our bodies to drop to a safe level, and during this time we still produce large amounts of heat. Chapter 9. Starting all over again. During my time in the reactor, I provided enough heat to supply electricity to over 500 homes for 8 years, and feel very proud that I have been able to do this without emitting any carbon dioxide, and therefore not contributing to global warming or the greenhouse effect. To pass the time, my fuel friends and I sleep a lot, as we are still very exhausted. After our rest though, we will have the opportunity to be reprocessed, as there is still 98% uranium in our bodies that is still useful. Therefore, my fuel friends and I can be recycled, and begin our journey again and again and again. An AGR with 2 reactors produces 1200 megawatts, so each reactor produces 600 megawatts. In a reactor, there are 300 fuel assemblies with 8 fuel elements in each, so there are 2,400 elements in each reactor. This means each fuel element individually produces 0.25 megawatts per hour. This means that over a year, each element produces 2,190 megawatts. The average house uses 4,000 kilowatt hours per year, so this means that each element can provide enough electricity to supply approximately 550 households. Did you know power stations do not store electricity, so it is constantly being made? The high voltage electricity, 400,000 volts, is distributed over long distances by pylons and high voltage overhead cables. The pylons and high voltage cables carry the electricity to a substation. A substation has transformers that step down the high voltage electricity into medium voltage electricity for around 12,000 volts. From the substation, distribution lines carry the medium voltage electricity to other transformers on utility poles or on the ground that reduce the electricity to low voltage, 240 volts, so that it can be used in homes, offices, stores and factories. A cable then carries the electricity from the distribution wires to a house through a meter box. The meter measures how much electricity the people in the house use. From the meter box, wires run through the walls in the house to outlets and lights. The electricity is always waiting in the wires to be used. The amount of electricity in the lines must be kept at a constant electrical pressure to provide enough power for the appliances and equipment that will use it.